this is a world crisis. This isn't something that just happened in Newmarket or Aurora or Barrie or Toronto. This is you know, a worldwide event that's got everybody's attention, and it's brought everything to a standstill for the most part. It's an unusual first-time situation that we've experienced this in our time frame, but I feel confident, like I said earlier, that something's gonna, you know, government leaders are stepping up to the plate on the medical field and economically to help get us through this. But it is something that, you know, through this process, that it's important that we do what we can do personally on the health side and our business wise, that is important on what we can do to be astute and how we deal with things. For example, you know, I think back to the last recession we had, you know, that was really substantial back in the 90s, that lasted a fair length of time. You know, there was no government intervention. There was no government help. It was really good luck. They had interest rates at 18% and 15%. It was crazy. You know, the six banks have come together. They're offering 6-month deferrals on payments, interest rates that are phenomenally almost free, cheap. And, you know, it's going to help everybody not make this a perfect scenario, but help get people through this crisis that we're going through. I'm going to look at my notes here. I think it's really important too that we all should be grateful that we have this opportunity to be in this business. You know, the average worker out there making what he's making doesn't have the opportunity that you have, that you can turn things up and you can become a better agent, a more knowledgeable agent on what you're doing and how you're doing it, to allow you to, you know, ride through this program, this process, along with becoming a better agent once you get through the other side of it. And you can't lose sight of that. What better business to be in than this opportunity that we can go out there and make as much money as we want to make, and help people that are going through these situations, and be the calming source, the knowledgeable source. And that's really important to realize, and help keep you on the upbeat and knowledgeable and strong through this process. You know, it is important that you be creative. I mean, these are times I think back in 1990, you know, for Diane and I, it was easy. Cut expenses and get out there and do more lead generating, and no whining that, well, I've worked an hour and doing something, you know, I got to do it. I got to go out and knock on more doors, or I got to go and make more cold phones, more than I did before. This is a little different. You got to be more resourceful. Use your other tools that are part of the current era. And I don't profess to be a, you know, a person of knowledge of it, but I know that, thank goodness, this opportunity does allow that. However, it doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, it's a great opportunity to phone your past clients, phone the database, and for the first time probably in your career, because I know my database was never up to date my whole career of 33 years. It was always something that always seemed to be behind the 8 ball. Well, here's an opportunity that you get a chance to touch base with those people and be sincere, be concerning, be helpful, and you know, let them know that we are all in this together as a group. You know, part of what you need to help educate yourself with is look around and see what other agents are doing to help eliminate this distancing with, you know, how do we show houses? How do we get around, you know, the part with, thank God technology is what it is to allow us to do things. I mean, I'm thinking if this happened in 1990, we'd be dead in the water. You know, we wouldn't have the ability at all to be able to manage this social part about body contact and getting too close and all that. Now you've got the tools that you're able to do this on a much higher level. And who knows, it may become more the norm on how we do business in general. I look around and I see what some companies are doing. You know, I think I get emails from Mercedes, for example, you know, and they're being creative. They're offering to drop your car off in your driveway to take a look at. They're offering you to, you know, 6 months worth of they're just being, what I'm trying to get at is they're being creative. You know, the takeout food restaurants are bragging about how they sanitize things and how they are touchless. Like they're all doing things that 3 months ago we wouldn't even thought of. And that's what you have to do in the real estate industry, is look around and see what you can do to be different, to be creative, and to touch on as many people as you can, because that's what this is. It's a numbers game to get out to as many people the things that you're able to do, that you're willing to do to be helpful. Remember, in good times and bad times, people have to sell real estate. We lose sight of that sometimes. We think to myself, oh, the market's down. Well, guess what? When the market's down, people have to sell. When the market's up, people want to buy. Like there's always movement in the market. So don't get caught up in the fact to think that, oh, the market's flat, there's nothing going on. Well, don't kid yourself. There's still things going on. And there is a bit of a silver lining through this, is that the government's giving you the opportunity to say that you're an essential business, so you can still be in business. I know there's reservations over some of the things, but you're aware of those. And if you're not aware of them, you're learning what those things are to help adapt your business to be strategic through this marketplace that we're in right now. But, you know, be guided by what Rico says, be guided by what the office is directing you on, what you can and can't do. But at the end of the day, the opportunity is still there for you to be in business. And when the government says it's okay to be in business, you know, it's not like you're doing something illegally. So that's a positive. Let's see, what else did I say? You know, it's really important to realize too that the disciplines you develop over the next 2 or 3 months through this process will be something that will hopefully become habit forming, that will be things that you're going to do continued on in your business. You know, for Diane and I, back in the 90s, when we experienced what we did, our drought, I think, certainly lasted a fair length of time. Not only we sustained through that, but we became better agents out the other side of it as a result of the disciplinary action that we did through those tough times. We just became stronger, more knowledgeable, more stable agents through the whole process. And really, at the end of the day, everything became water off a duck's back, for lack of a better way to say it, because you just became so strong through the process. It wasn't necessarily fun, but you became stronger through it. You know, I'm going to roll back to the part about being helpful. When you're calling your database, that's really the key part of what you want to be getting at. You're not going to be asking them, are you going to buy or sell? You know, you're going to be asking them how they're doing. You're going to be asking how the kids are, all the things we talk about. You know, you want to be sensitive to what's going on with the marketplace and what's going on with, you know, the health and situation of what's taking place in our environment, that they're going to appreciate your caring voice. They're going to appreciate you checked in and see how things were going through a time that I'm sure 75% of the population is just trembling over what's next. Who knows what's going to happen from an income standpoint, from a health standpoint. There's a double, triple whammy going on right now. You know, just to kind of reiterate, this is a world crisis. This isn't something that's your own problem. This is something that the whole world is having to deal with. And there are some positives out of it. Like I said, you know, low interest rates. And along with government, helpfully bailouts to help keep people from feeling like they haven't got any money coming in, to help get them through this process. I do want to touch on a little bit on interest rates. There's been a lot of chatter that I've heard on, you know, whether you should fix your mortgage in or you know, take advantage of the variable rate. I just think that it's important to realize that interest rates are extremely low, and one of the things I don't like about fixed rate mortgages is that you're locked in. So if you decide to sell your house in 2 years, you want to refinance it, you're dealing with more complications and much higher penalties that are totally, interest rate differential kicks into gear. And over a 40-year period, variable rates have always sustainably been the lowest rates going. However, they can have their little hiccups. One thing I know for sure, whether you decide to lock in or not, that's your personal choice. I know that the government can't crank rates up to rates that we talked about earlier, 13, 15, 18%. It's impossible, okay? There's no way they could even think about those things. And so at the end of the day, I'll just give you an example on one of our properties. We're paying 1.45 as a variable rate. And if I locked in today, it'd be 2.95. So in the back of my mind, I say to myself, that's 1.5% spread that I can play with over the next couple of years to really see what's going on and have total flexibility. If I decide to sell something or if I want to refinance it, I don't have to worry about having to deal with whether I want to still deal with that same institution, because if I don't, I got to pay interest rate differential. It just gives you a lot more flexibility. I know there's comfort over locking your mortgages in for 4 or 5 years. And if you are going to lock in, I would encourage you to do it 4 to 5 years, not 1 or 2. It's more Russian roulette you're playing. The whole idea is trying to be protective. And you know what? Rates are cheap, even at 2.95. That's a great rate, for example, on a 5-year rate today. However, you can see what I'm trying to get at is that at 1.45, where we're currently sitting on most of our variable rates right now on our properties, I got a point and a half that I can play with over the next whatever before it gets up to the rate it's at. Never mind if you decide to lock in and you still got a year or 2 left on it, you still got to pay penalty interest. You got to take that into account what your costs are to try and do this. Anyways, just wanted to touch on rates. Wanted to throw out my thoughts on it, just give you my idea over what you're doing. And one of the things, if you're an investor and you have several properties, you may want to lock, some of them in to give you some protection on that. But I think it's important that you don't just do it because the bank tells you to do it. Bankers don't really know how to balance their own checkbooks for the most part, unfortunately. And you're relying on their input over what to do. Do your own math, do your own calculations to roll out the different scenarios. But I really don't have a whole lot more to add or share. I'm open for questions, but at the end of the day, all I want to tell you is that we will get through this. There's too many smart minds working on this that will not get us through the health side of this thing. And the economic side will get sorted out. It'll get sorted out. And I really believe that the economic recovery is going to be faster than some of the things you've been hearing, because the economic climate was very strong before it went into that. I know there's going to be some wrinkles that are going to take place on the rebound, but at the end of the day, the big thing is the sooner they can get something to help contain what's going on and get a handle on things with not necessarily a vaccine, but some sort of medication that helps make people more comfortable, you're going to have more things take place on the business side of things to open up and get things somewhat back to normal. I don't really have a whole lot more to add over what I was going to tell you. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I'll ask you one that I think might be useful. If you had have known what was coming in, if you had have known what was coming in terms of drastic change ahead with pricing of homes, interest rates going up, what would you have proactively done ahead of time in terms of cost cutting on your personal finances and business finances if you knew it was coming? Or what would you recommend people do right now with certain things?
Well, we can't look in the past because we can't change it, but the point is more right now is look at cost cutting. Cut whatever expenses you don't need to help get you through this. Be careful though, because you're going to come out of it. And when you're dealing with employees, you're dealing with things, you don't want to be stuck in a grid where it takes I mean, that's in a way kind of what's good about the fact that government's called you a necessity of being able to operate in business. You don't have to shut down and close down. You can keep things churning, not necessarily at the same level it was before, as far as an expense standpoint, but you can keep your business open. So definitely cut expenses, but be prepared that once we get the other side, you want to be operating on all four cylinders. Try not to look in the past. We all wish we could have done things differently through this, including, I'm sure, our leaders, wish they had done some stuff and taken things more seriously on certain events, but we can't look back. We got to look forward with how we move forward from this point on. And I can't emphasize enough, you got to keep your head up. You got to be positive, and we have a lot of great things to be positive about. So, like that. Any other questions at all? Or?
So I had a question in terms of when you came out of a shift, what did the market look like then?
You don't realize it until about 6 months later. And remember, in the 90s, I mean, you guys have experienced, for those of you that were around in 2007, 2008, I was here then. And then, 2015, when we saw that big kerplunk for 10 months or a year, especially in the suburbs, not necessarily so much downtown Toronto, but in the suburbs, you don't realize it till 3, 4, 5, 6 months later that you're out of it. So in a way, that's good, because hopefully you've got your game face on, you're working hard, you're working smart, and you're laser focused, because that's what happens. You don't want to get back to complacency. The better you get at being disciplined and being structured, I just thought of that now. This is a real important time to keep your structure. You're working from home. It's easy to get laid back. It's easy to go flick on, let's make a deal or whatever it is. It's all the more reason why you want to stay focused on your schedule, because you need to be disciplined during this time to be able to do the things that are going to enhance your business. So to answer your question about when did you realize it, it wasn't a month later. It was like 3, 6 months. And to be honest with you, thinking back to the 1990s, because I'll never forget that one. The other ones are easier to forget because they were a year, 18 months, whatever, 6 months. And in real estate terms, that's not a long time. 1990 lasted 5 years for sure. And okay, 5 years for sure of pain and suffering. However, it was years 6, 7, 8, 9, which is 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, that we take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, And it was like, are we in? Are we improving? Oh, we're not, So you're kind of coming and going for the latter 5 of the 10 years that we went through that pain and suffering.
Hey, Tom, it's Ann.
Hi.
Hi. What do you see as opportunities in the way things are right now? What do you see as the opportunities?
I think it's an opportunity to get more creative with what you're doing. I think it's an opportunity to start lead generating. I mean, one thing I found out, my son-in-law, Vincent, he was awakened. You can't door knock the way that was our go-to vehicle. But you can call your past clients, you can call your database, you can call, you can cold call, but get more creative on the technology side of things. For those of you that aren't that technical, this is an opportunity to learn more and figure out how to do that on a higher level, which our company is great at, offering those tools to help train you to do it. And this is the opportunity to learn and get better so you can get stronger with that part of it.
Do you think it's still okay to cold call?
Yeah, I think with the right message, I think it is. But I would probably reduce it to a lower part. I would spend more time calling my database and my past clients.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the cold calling would be a small part of what I would do right now. You're hovering more. And if you're looking, I think back, I remember talking to one of my coaches. And I'd always say to him, you know, I never get my database up to date. He says, well, guess what? Welcome to the real world. Your database never gets caught up to date. If you're lead generating at the level you should be lead generating, your database will never get caught up to date. Well, this may be an opportunity where that might be the first time ever in my real estate career that might happen. But if on a priority basis, I'd call my past clients first, and then I'd call my database. I'd get all my database called.
What about for new people, new realtors who don't really have much of a database yet, who might be joining this call, who don't have a lot of people to call who they've done business with? Maybe they haven't even done any deals yet, or they've done one or two. What would you recommend they do right now?
Work on your past clients, and as few as they are, to ask for referrals, ask for any inklings they have to start building up that relationship, to start adding some of those people that they might think are there. And the technology side, do your, you know, enhancing on technology so that you're reaching out to people, because as you go through this, you're going to get leads from that, and from those leads you're going to build up business, so that they may not be ready now, but when it comes time that we get out of this process, they're going to be saying, hey, look at through this whole thick and thin, they kept in touch with me.
Right.
Remember this, even through this, Jamie Lee tells me, I mean, the officer is still busy with transactions and listings. People have to sell. People have been caught short. People have been caught buying, and they might have taken a wait and see attitude through this, but they're forced to, I got a house closing in May or June. I got to do something to make this happen, you know? So there's a need. I think that's why the government didn't allow real estate to close.
Yeah.
Any other questions at all, or any other thoughts? Anybody?
I have a question, Tom. It's Leo Augusto.
Oh, hi, Leo. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Hope you're well. How do
Yeah.
you see door knocking proceeding the next few months?
No.
Like, it's just, what do you think's going to happen? Like, I know it's
No.
hard to predict. No one knows
No.
what's going to happen, but what's,
I can tell you right now, with social distancing, they'll be offended with you
Yes.
doing it. Okay. And if you want to do something that's a little more getting out there again, might be, once again, go visit your past clients just to do a casual drive-by. But creating lead generating as door knocking, I think that's going to be on the holding pattern for a while. I can't believe I'm saying that, because I firmly believe that's what helped bail Diane and I out of 1990s, was really being laser focused with that part of it. You know, between that and cold calls, I think that you're going to work on doing cold phones and the new technology to go and get leads.
yeah.
Because people are paranoid now. People are paranoid now. And you know what? Even if you start walking around with a mask on, which now that's down in the States here, that seems to be the hype. Everybody's saying maybe we should be putting a mask on. I think it's going to take a little while for them to feel comfortable being too close.
Yeah.
Which, if I was in the business still, that'd be a hard pill to swallow. It was almost like, it was just routine, you know? What do? You have your team meeting and we go out and knock on the door. So it's just, it's like, wow, you know?
Yeah, it's killing me.
Saying that.
Thank you.
But you know what? These podcasts that are going out there, you know, that's another thing to start working on and think about. And Facebook, like, it's like, those are some items that even old fart like me starting to watch and pay attention to. So, you know, it's catching on, and get creative with that.
Hey, Tom, it's Mike.
Hey, Mikey, how you doing?
Oh, good, fine. We just, we sold a couple of houses last night, so, you know, now I'm left with no inventory and starting over again. And I'm getting a lot of calls from people who used to door knock, and they're asking me for cold calling scripts in this market. And I just didn't know if anybody's had any success at KWA with cold calling or actually just cold calling people?
You know, I think back to the old script that I used for decades. I don't know that I would necessarily modify it a whole lot, other than maybe throwing in one or two more lines dealing with the certain situation is today. Okay. I would still use that Mike Ferry, you know, just calling in the area. Hope all is well, and hope you folks are staying. You know, who, what, where, when, why is the basic fundamental of it. But adding in one or two lines, and you touch on, you adapt it to what you think is necessary, that are more sensitive, other than just saying, okay, are you ready to move? Adapt to add one or two more lines to that script that, you know, dealing with today's health situation.
Great. And this might be a question for Jamie Lee, is what do we have in place for, as far as, I think we have a new system called Tell Us Something. Do we have lists that we can actually acquire to make these calls?
Yeah, I would have to check with Heather. Jeff might also know. I don't know if Jeff's on this call, what we have, but it scrubs your database so that you're not calling anybody on the do not call list. So
I'm here, Jamie Lee. It's called telelisting. And Mike, if you check your email or contact Allison, she did send out a great, concise how-to, and just recently how to access and what it will do for you. Okay,
and who is that from, that email?
You can check with Allison.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be the admin at KW Advantage email.
Yeah, because I just think we just sold a couple of houses in our neighborhood, and I thought maybe I should just experiment and go on and make some calls and see what happens.
Mikey, you know what? Right on. Like, forget about experimenting. You know, Mike, you've been through this. People still do things, okay? The worst of times, they still have to do business, and the governments give the blessing that it's okay to be open. There's a lot of people around those houses going, wow, I can't believe they sold a house. You got a lot to brag about, you know? So I would be definitely calling around those people, knowing I couldn't go out and door knock them. I would be calling them and just tweak the script so that it's a little bit more sensitive than just the normal 4 or 5 questions that we ask.
Yeah, because I'm thinking a lot of agents, I would think, that are newer, that are probably a little fearful right now where their business is going to come from. And I think this would give them an opportunity to call around our company's listings and just checking in to see, I think the basic question is, we've sold a couple and we're just reaching out to people that are really actually interested in moving in this marketplace we're in. Could be as simple as that.
Yep, right on. And whether it's your listing or one of the company's listings, brag about it like it's your own.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. You know, it's an up, and I can't look at it's hard for me because I'm not the most passionate, compassionate, warm and friendly guy. So it's hard for me to have this conversation with you guys, that's what you have to be a little bit more. So, that's something that I can't emphasize enough. It's not just about a number, it's about reaching into their sensitivity right now and understanding that, but still don't lose sight of the fact you're looking for business. And there's more people than you think there is that aren't just saying, I gotta do something, I want to move, whether it's because they have to or whether it's because they want to. There's a lot of business just brewing out there waiting to pop, because it's that time. And it's about who's going to be the most aggressive to go after it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as a company, we could create something, maybe a Zoom call. Maybe we've got some teams on KWA that make their living from cold calling, and I would suspect they're still cold calling. So, and I suspect there's a lot of agents that are sitting around wondering what they should be doing.
Yeah. Well, for those agents that are sitting around, get up off your butt and get down and get dirty. How's that saying go? When the going get tough, the tough get going. And, This isn't the time to feel sorry for yourself.
No, and I've had some newer agents call me and say, well, like, what happens when, Mike, you've been through this? And I said, yeah, I remember in 1989 and about, I think it was near the middle to end of March, where the phone stopped ringing in our office. And of course, that's what used to happen. And we really had to get to work as realtors. And it really just came down to, geez, we got to put food on the table and we got to pay our bills. And you're right. Yes, you need a little tougher posture, but I think at the end of the day, you can word in such a way that like you said, back then, when business was so poor, it was just finding that 2% of people that wanted to buy or sell in real estate. And as I remember, about half the industry fell out. I think we lost about half our realtors in 89 and 90.
Yeah, bingo. That's exactly right. Which rolls back to when the going get tough, the tough get going. It's really, in a way, I mean, it's a good thing from a rebounding standpoint, the government stepping in and paying people to stay home is a good thing because it's going to help, help self-isolate and do some of the things that we need to do and allowing the economy to jumpstart quicker rather than if they said, well, tough luck. It's typical recession thing and that's the way it is. So with that being said, it's no reason to be complacent as a realtor, okay? And even though you may qualify for a little bit of money of this or that, this is an opportunity to take advantage of a situation where if you're working and you're working smart and getting creative with how you're doing things, there's opportunities out there that you're going to be taking advantage of the people that need to buy and sell real estate.
Yeah, so maybe we can create a Zoom class session on cold calling and what are all the steps in today's market that we need to do to put that in place. I can probably talk more to Jamie Lee and Emily about if maybe there's already something being put in place, but we could start that.
There's for sure still space to do stuff on our calendar, and I know there's 45 people on the call now, so I'll just reiterate. Please check daily the kwevents.ca website. There's a call every day from 1 to 2 for sure, and then there's other speakers. So tomorrow, Rob Shigaris is going to be on for an hour answering all the questions about what the government's doing, tips on financial advising, on cost cutting. Just to add to what you said, Mike, I think there could be a blessing in disguise by calling people right now. None of us know what the market's going to look like in 3 to 6 months. So let's say, and I don't like to be negative, but let's say prices drop 20 to 30% and people get their home up and they sell it with you in the next 2 weeks. That's going to be a huge blessing for people. We don't know, right? People ultimately have to make their own decisions. But I wouldn't say we can't list homes and sell them virtually. It's being done. We're seeing closings coming in. We're seeing listings coming up where people have to sell their home. And that will happen more after this. The economic hit on a lot of families will be big and they're going to need to sell. So whether they do that now or 3 to 6 months from now, if you're cold calling to offer a service that we're still legally allowed to do, I think go for it. I mean, you're never going to get a better contact ratio than now with everybody at home.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's a great point, Jamie. Never the ratio was always 28 to 30% of the people home. And people ask me over the years, it's that ratio. I don't keep track of contacts because I knew what that ratio was, whether I was doing cold phones or door knocking. That ratio, I bet you that ratio now is 65% or higher of who's going to be home.
At least.
Yeah, and at least you got a live body to talk to. But here's the thing, at the very least, through this process, if you're not calling your database and you're not calling your past clients, you're missing the boat. You are missing the boat big time. And that's where getting into structure, getting into being disciplined with your schedule. I didn't have to rewrite my schedule every year because I did it for decades. I knew exactly what it was. But I had to train new agents coming in that worked with our team, that worked with us to get them in the groove. And after a couple of years of doing it, it became autopilot for them. And some of them have gone on to do their own thing and their schedule is still the same way. You know, their schedule's ingrained in them and how they do things. And this is what is it's going to be a little bit more challenging if you're not a schedule type person to do it, because you're working from home and it's easy to kind of wander off and do whatever. It's all the more reason to A, create a schedule so that you know you're working when you're working, even though you're at home, and B, be disciplined to make sure you adhere to that schedule.
That's a really good point. And I also think that whatever lead gen time that you're planning, that for every call you need to double the time that it might actually take you. People
Right.
want to talk. People want to talk.
You're going to be on the phone longer, you're right.
Yeah.
However, with that being said, we want to be sensitive. Be careful and not get caught up with the chatty Cathy that keeps you on the phone for half an hour.
Yeah.
Because it's okay to have that conversation with a past client or the database, but not when you're cold calling.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
But it's going to be a little longer than normal. It was easy for me because I'm a black and white kind of guy, and on to the next. It was like I didn't want to spend too long unless I felt the vibes that something was going on there. But for some people, it might be a bit of a challenge. Just be aware of that. If you are that type that likes to get lulled into those conversations, especially if you're not a past client or your database, you wanna realize you got to make so many calls that day, and don't do it by time. You want to be doing numbers, okay? Time, it's easy to slough through. You want to be working with numbers and setting your goals, knowing what they are and how many calls you're going to make. But that's a good point. Forgot about that.
Tom, I've got a question for you. It's Carol Foderick. I've got a bunch of buyers right now that have nothing to sell, are pre-qualified, ready to go, but their concern, and I sort of share it, is that if they buy something now in maybe what could be a waning strong, spring market as we go into this, how are we dealing with the possibility that we could see, even if it's just a 10% market correction, 4 months from now? So I've got concerns at every price point. I've got a $3 million buyer that had that thought. I've got a $500,000 that had that thought. And they would like to wait just to see where the market sort of settles, or if there's further opportunity farther down the line.
Nobody has a crystal ball, and we've dealt with that over the decades. Good markets, bad markets. Should I, shouldn't I? All you can do is be positive and say, look, you can't forecast what's going to happen here. Jamie sent me something from the Royal Bank saying the market could conceivably go down 20, 30% of what's going on. Well, guess what? If they find a cure, they find some sort of remedy over this thing, and we get out of this in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and there's a lot less deaths than what they're projecting in the US and in Canada, that changes the game plan. So nobody knows for sure. So don't get caught up in what you're hearing. Just all the more reason why you're dealing with people that are motivated, that need to do things. And for the guy that's you can't change, I'm the guy that introduced dealing with offers by phone and by fax, okay? I'm talking about this. I'm the guy that created that, okay? Before it was even heard of, what you guys operate with DocuSign and a whole bag. What am I going to people's houses and sitting down in front of them and I was doing deals over the phone and doing things by fax and just changing the whole way things get operated with. Well, one of the things that happens through that, good times and bad, is that I never tried to be a counselor, in the sense that I never tried to forecast what's going to happen in the future. Because if you're wrong, that falls back on your plate. All you can do is give them the facts. Give them the facts on what's currently going on and let them decide. Carlos, what happened? Can you see
Everybody
me
still there? Oh.
Okay, I got it.
Can I, Tom? Can I?
So all you can do is give me, all you can do is,
I just want to throw something else at Carol. I think it's a legitimate question. I don't think you're ever going to convince those people. A, you don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen. And if they're unsure and if it's unknown, they probably should be purchasing. But there are going to be people, no matter what the market's doing, are going to want to buy and sell, right? And Tom, we know that when we were selling houses, when like a month later they were down 5%, 6 months they were down 10%. We'd already sold 10 houses at that point, right?
Exactly.
And they had to wait, literally they had to wait 10 years before their values went up to what they paid for it, because I was one of them, right? I mean, I still went out and bought a house, and my home, it took me 10 years to get back to what I paid for the house, for the value. So it really comes down to finding people that you don't have to convince. to buy and sell, but just actually want to buy and sell.
Thanks, Mike. That's exactly it. You know what? Whether you follow the stock market or whether you follow the real estate market, nobody can time the market. Nobody can. Even if you're in the business, they can have their own opinions, okay? But nobody can. You can't get caught up in that. You got to get caught up in finding motivated buyers and sellers that need to do something now. End of story. And they'll come out. And you know what? Here's the thing. In my 33-year career, or whatever length of time it was, I've lost track. Nobody ever called me back 6 months later and said, you know what? You're the worst agent in the world because you got me to buy at the high part of the market. Nobody. Matter of fact, some of those people called me back and took a big hit and said, we love our house and we're so thankful. And a year or two later, they call me back to sell their house again because they want to move again. So don't try not to get too stressed over you being this crystal ball person that has to predict what's going to happen down the road.
Yeah, Tom, people have lost the concept on when people used to buy a home because it was a place they wanted to live and bring up their family. Like, people have lost that concept. People are now buying and selling like the stock market, right? We sold a house last night and they sold about 80,000 less than what their neighbor sold a month ago. But they're going to Burlington, and now we're seeing that there's room in Burlington, that those homes that were going for 112 are now closer to $1 million. So, but all their need is, she's pregnant, they're gonna have a second child, they need a dwelling. So it's really, I think, Carol, it's a legitimate question, there's no doubt. And, and I don't know how you would advise them, but it comes right down to people that are now buying and living a home because just for lifestyle.
Mike, you hit a good point. Now, Carol sounds like she's just got buyers. So that's a little different. They don't have anything to sell. When you got a buyer and a seller, it's an easy one. 99% of the time, that seller is going to make up what he's lost on his house at the other end when he goes to buy.
Because back then, I only worked with buyers back then. I didn't work with sellers, if you remember.
Right.
And I just worked with buyers.
I know.
And you're right. I never had a buyer ever call me back 6 months, a year later and say, you son of a gun, how come never had that happen.
Never, ever.
Mike, question for you, Mike. This is Laura. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hi, Laura, I can hear you.
Hi, okay, great. And Pepper. I brought Pepper in.
Hi, Pepper.
Puppies make
so
everybody happy. So the houses that you sold last night, I'm just curious, strategy-wise, like, did you continue sort of the holdback strategy, or are you migrating to sort of a list price based on what you're presuming value to be? Or talk to me a little bit about that. I have a few listings that aren't moving, and I'm just wondering what's working for you.
Yeah, so Laura, so Candace and I probably drive ourselves crazy. We must talk 6 times a day about pricing strategy. We're calling agents up, in the hood, we're talking to them, and we're finding, like, if we were to put a home up now, I think we might lean more toward, I think we'd probably have a conversation, first off, that they're probably going to take 5 or 10% less than what they think or what the market's showing. And so I think we got lucky last night because I think we're on the very tail end of this, holding offers back, because we are finding there's lots of buyers out there looking for deals. So I think we're leaning towards putting it closer to, we're talking the market underneath the $1 million, but, and we're still finding that homes at 1.2 and 1.3, if they're the nicest home in that neighborhood, are still selling. But now they can't be just a nice home, they got to be the most beautiful home. So I think we're leaning towards trying to price them accordingly, but we are really learning this day by day.
So in your experience in it, I haven't been involved very much in a declining market, other than, the blip we had sort of in 2017, and I call it a blip because I don't think it lasted for very long. But in a declining market, when you're pricing listings and coming out, the goal is to be ahead of the drop. Is that correct? So
that is correct. You want to be ahead. You want to actually suggest a list 5 or 10% underneath, because in a month from now, you said that you might be looking back and you might have saved yourself 10% by doing that.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
you
if you
want to
look
be
at sort of the
ahead of the curve.
recent, if you look at the most recent comparables and they tell you, let's say 1.2 is really the value,
Mhm.
that you really want to be offers any time, but be somewhere like in the low 1.1s.
Yeah, like 1,150,000. And really it's going to come down, if they do their math, are they buying something? Do you know the other marketplace they're buying? And do the numbers work on both ends? Because, and Tom remembers this, is like, if they're upgrading, they're actually making money because the houses they're buying has gone down more than theirs, right? So you
Yeah.
got to get into sort of that mathematical explanation. It's going to come down to, if you say your home's 1.2, but let's say we're only going to get 1.1 for it. Can you afford to move? If we get 1.1 and then you want to pay, you know, will the numbers work? That's what it's going to come down to.
Right. Okay.
You know, it's interesting, Mike. You just mentioned something that I remember. So I used to get excited when someone was upgrading during a bad market because it's a great opportunity to do that. My
Huge.
conversation went into a bit of a dull roar without, you know, getting too, but once again, it all depended on motivation. When someone's upgrading, 10% of 1.5 million and 10% of $1 million, just do the math. It's really that simple. And so it's just you as an agent understanding that allows you to be able to hit home with some of those points when you're having discussions with people. It's not just, oh, I'm taking less. Well, if you're spending less, at the end of the day, you're coming out ahead.
Right.
The challenge.
It's actually an easier conversation than in a market that's moving upwards.
That's right. That's right. The market that goes crazy is a very challenging market because you don't know what to say, and everybody believes they can get $2 million for their $1.5 million house, and nobody's ever happy. Whereas you got a sliding market, you get sellers that just want to kiss you all day long, and they finally sold their house.
Yeah.
Now, I know you folks in Toronto have experienced a stronger market for a longer period of time, but out in the suburbs, we've experienced houses sitting around for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you know, and our friends that are up in, you know, Midland and Barrie and north of Barrie, you know, not uncommon for them to sit around for 6 months or 9 months or a year.
Yeah, you know, and Laura, what we were dealing with, the market was so poor, like prices were dropping, I don't know, 10,000 a week. I don't know if you remember, Tom, and homes were selling for 200,000 back then, right? So, but what we had is we had people that they're going to get to a point, they couldn't make their mortgage payments. They got divorced, and really, and what would they have to do? We had interest rates of, I don't know, 15, 16%. We would tell the seller, we want you to spend $10,000 to buy your rate down. So it's going to cost you then. And we want you to offer an extra point to the buying agent. So we can probably get you out of this. You're going to lose maybe 40, 50,000 out of your pocket. Do you remember those conversations, Tom?
You know what? I now that you're talking about it, I totally forgot about that part of it. We didn't have short sales. As bad as our market got for a long period of time, we never had a thing called short sales. We had the opportunity to either finally sell it for what the strategies Mike said, or you lost it and the bank went power sale. There was no such thing as a short sale. And you're only taking a 30,000 hit, but you're not hurting your credit rating. You're getting your house sold, and it's better you sell it than the bank sell it because then it's lights out.
Yeah. So those are the times we're coming to.
I appreciate the perspective. It's one I don't have from personal experience, so appreciate it.
Yeah, but you know what? I really do want to be optimistic here. I'm hoping that the economic rollout of this thing is not as bad as what now everybody's getting a little paranoid over. Now that we've been down for the count for a couple of weeks here, everybody's catching on about being, you know, quarantined and all that. I'm hoping that, like, they find not necessarily a cure, but a way to remedy this so less people are dying and they can, you know, other than respirators, getting them healed. And two, the sooner that can happen, the sooner people are going to gain confidence back to get back out and get rolling with business like they did 3 months ago. And I know that might be optimistic, but I really feel that that's very possible. And, you know, I'm a cup half full kind of guy, so I'm going to stick with that. And you guys, as realtors, you need to be that way all the time. Whether you're feeling down, you know, I always remember a coach telling me once, you know, the script is, you know, how do you feel today? Great. Whether you're feeling like crap, you're feeling whatever, your response is always great. Because A, half the population doesn't want to hear about how bad things are for you. And two, if you're ho-hum or I'll get by or that kind of attitude, you're not going to succeed in what you need to do. And that is, you need to be the pacifier. You have to be the person of knowledge. You have to be the person that helps guide people through when the marketplace is steady, still running through an emotional time. And I know all you folks know about that. Real estate sales purchases is the most emotional part. Well, add the whole health issue we're going through now. I'm sure that the emotions are even higher than they've ever been before. And you got to be the calming force. And be real, be sensitive, but be strong and be positive over what you're going to get them through.
That's great. And I think Obi has a question. Is that correct?
Yes, Tom, thanks. It's very practical. Number one, what content I can send via MailChimp right now?
Sorry?
What kind of email content I can send to my database through MailChimp right now? Like what kind of emails? Like usually I send listings like invites to open house, and I send like seasonal stuff, like the buyers are looking, stuff like that. What I can send right now?
I would look for encouraging things about the virus, okay? Along with business things about Mike Clark or the KW sold a house on a certain street. Like I would still tie in with the business side of things, but deal with anything positive. You're finding out what's going on with the virus.
Okay, so that's a great idea. Just get a list of our listings from MLS.
Let me
That's
tell you
all.
something going on right now. So I go for my run this morning. If you watch CNN on the news, 250,000 people are going to die in the US as a result of this, okay? I heard on my run this morning from someone, it could be as little as 20 or 30,000 people in the US. Okay, so it's all about interpretation. Who knows what's going to happen down the road? You want to look for the positive things and send that to your clients to send out, or anything that might be helpful to help them be cautionary through this tough time. That's the kind of stuff that
I might be able to offer something to Ovi, Tom. It's because I got lucky. I was fortunate, sold 2 houses last night. So I'm going to put something out to my database of about 2,500 people in a story form that here's what's currently happening today in the market. You know, we had, you know, I might get into say normally we would have had 8 offers. We had 2. We would have got, you know, my client accepted 80,000 less that the neighbor did. For me, I'm going to be very real about it, but I'm going to actually talk about that this is a kind of market that if you have a real need to move and a strong desire, that it can be done. You know, you're just going to need the right agent to accomplish that for you. And I'm just going to put it out there just so, if anything, I get some inquiries on what's happening.
Mike, you weren't lucky. You're an excellent agent.
And my second question was, okay, no door knocking, but I still have a bunch of postcards. Should I go and distribute those?
No, I'd hold off on that for now. People are scared to touch paper. You know what I mean? So I would hold off on that for now. That would be one of the first things I start to maybe implement as I start to feel like things are getting better. But just that whole thing, you know? I don't know how you guys are, but if I get a UPS package here, I'm thinking, should I touch it or not? You know, like, so I would back off on that. That's my gut feeling. I just think that people are so sensitive over everything.
Yeah. Ovi, Lee Wellbanks, our mortgage guy at the office, just put out a great article on deferring your mortgage. So that's something we're going to be sending out to, like, you know, educating our clients on different things that they can do to, you know, hang on to their money, because there's lots of questions out there. People are scared, like, are they going to make their mortgage payment? Are they going to make their rent payment? So I think if you can get some real, like if you get a hold of that Lee Wellbanks, what he put out on mortgages, that's a great article to send out to your clientele, educating them.
Yeah.
or just
Can I just speak to
refinance
that
if
as
I
well?
can,
Oh,
or
sorry,
just get
Opie,
my, yeah, go ahead, Norris.
sorry, Ovi, I'll just speak to what Mike said as well. I did my first online town hall with my database last night. So I emailed everybody in my database, reached out to a bunch of people, put it on social media, just information about mortgage deferrals, and then also hosted a Zoom call for all of my clients last night so they could call in. It was like a town hall with a mortgage broker, not just mortgage deferrals, but what's happening with interest rates. And we recorded the Zoom call, and then we're going to post it to YouTube and then send it out as a link again to all of my database. So again, it's all about just like multiple touch points. As you know already, Ovi, I'm a huge database person. And, my assistant Danielle and I are just going to use this opportunity. We're going to lean into our database huge in the next 30 days. We're going to contact every single person multiple times. So this week it was mortgage deferrals. Next week, I've got a financial planner talking about how to trim up your household budget and just try to find content that's relevant to them and just really, really, really lean in and provide a lot of customer service at a time when a lot of people are struggling with, various topics. So I've also got a teacher coming on talking about how to effectively homeschool at home. So it's not as necessarily real estate relevant, but it's just a way to stay in front of people and provide them, good customer service and keep yourself top of mind in a time when a lot of agents are not doing that.
Very good. That's excellent. That's being creative and that's being sensitive. It's covering all the bases. Good job.
Just to add to that, Ovi, so some extra things you can do. We are posting information like these government subsidies. We will have a full document from the accountant tomorrow. And some of your clients in your database might be curious about that, but not have the resources or contacts to find out exactly what's going on. So you could be sending out information that might also help them financially during this time. Market snapshots of homes that sold in their neighborhood from TREB, and just combine useful information, not just generic blasts. You want it to be things that will help people right now.
Any other questions at all? A lot of good questions flying around there. A lot of good ideas.
Yeah, Tom, I have a question about how recreational properties differed from residences. Did you see people offloading their cottages or their second homes, that type of thing?
For sure. I mean, that did become what they did. What I found actually back in the 90s was that, forget about recreational properties. If you lived in our area, for example, Newmarket and Aurora, if you lived out in the rural, okay, people were moving into town because they wanted to save on gas. They wanted to save on having to commute their kids back and forth. All the expense that goes in with being in a rural property, even though it's only 5 or 8 miles away, they were moving back in. We had one client that moved out, a year later moved back, all because of the economics over the whole process. So that, along with rural properties, certainly when the market dampens, that gets affected. And it gets a psyche that, they're going to say, I'm going to get rid of this item because it's a luxury item and I don't really feel the need that we should be keeping it. Depends how bad it gets. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I think to Carol's point, Tom, it's you become a totally different type of agent in today's market. Tom, when I was selling homes here in the upper beaches in the early 90s, most clients were crying at the table while I was talking to them. Literally, it was gut wrenching because there was lots and lots of people. And, some I couldn't help them all. Some went into receivership. Some went bankrupt. I was saying, I've heard of people, and Tom, remember, agents were driving their Jags up to dealership and leaving them at the front of the dealerships, if you remember, with the keys in the car. This is still early. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but this could get a lot worse, right? So, but what you do is you become, not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, but the empathy and your genuine ability to want to help, not with the agenda that, hey, I need to sell a house, but how can I help you alleviate the pain you're going through? Or how can I assist you? And Now, the thing what was great about that, what didn't seem great at the time, I bought 3 homes in 1988, Tom, right? And then we know what happened in 89. And I got a call from the bank one week from TD Bank. I love TD Bank, don't get me wrong. And the manager says, I would like $50,000 by the end of the week, or we're gonna foreclose on your home. And I remember what that was like. So, you know, I figured it out. You know, my parents co-signed on a loan, and you know, I lost money on the other 2 properties. So when I was out there, I was dealing with people, and I said, I know exactly how you feel. Like and you know what? That really transcended to them about that they were talking to a real person that understands what they're going through. And that made a big difference.
Well, I'll just add to that too, Mike, and that's exactly the way it unraveled. You know, you think about it, people not only were dealing with financial hardships, a lot of these became divorces and separations and family issues as a result of all that. The number one reason for divorces is all financial related in most cases. So it's like you become this person who's got to keep it all together through this process. Here's one thing that I will say, unlike what Mike's talking about though in 1990, the banks then, his response was exactly the way it was. They didn't give a hoot. They weren't talking about lowering interest rates to help people get by or waiving any payments. That's where the slight difference is. And that's where I'm hoping that this marketplace and this economy will be able to ride through this a little bit stronger, is the banks being very accommodating to help get through this. So that's the side note that's a little different. But you're this person who's dealing with people, like Mike said, they're crying, they're emotional, they're wondering where they're going to live, are they going to move back in with parents, and they're 45 years old, like just all kinds of situations that it's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, and Tom, you know, I remember you and Diane calling me, and I think I was fourth. We were with Remax. I was 4th in North America for sales, working with buyers. And you said, you know, Mike, I would like you to be part of your mastermind. You're such a, you know, you seem to be such a top agent. I remember going to the meeting and telling you and Diane how broke I was, that I didn't have a pot to piss in, right? Because I had just bought 3 homes, and it was almost that cemented a relationship because you got, this guy's pretty real.
Yeah,
and because I was going through that. Here I was, ultra successful real estate agent, beyond broke.
And guess what, guys? That was the norm. You know, these agents driving around Jaguars and whatever they had. I got to tell you guys a cute story. So we had a team meeting back in our Remax days, and we'd have our weekly meeting, and we came in. We had this big, heavy lady. She smoked like a trooper. I was scared to get punched by her because I think she'd knock me out in one swing. Anyway, she smoked like a trooper, swore like whatever. And I remember her, and she wasn't religious. And she gets up at the front where the owner was and said, okay, I want to have a little prayer. And I forget exactly how the prayer goes, but the bottom line was, she goes, please, Lord, help us. We promise we won't blow all our money if you give us one more opportunity to have a normal economy. And to hear it come out of just the way she did it all, I don't want to bore you with the whole sermon, but it was just the very ending was, and please, Lord, help us get through this because we promise we won't blow our money next time around. Poor soul is dead today, Betty, and she just was just like, she could have been a truck driver. But here's the nice thing about what we do, guys. I think about it, and Mike's talking about the clients that were sad and upset, and a lot of these poor people really didn't make a lot of money, and they didn't have a lot there. And here we are in our business with the opportunity, if we work hard and we work smart and get more on purpose with what we're doing, the sky's the limit, even in a bad market. And that in itself should be enough hope to know that this is a worthwhile effort to go out and be more effective with what you do. That's what always kept me going through it, because we felt pain and suffering through the 90s. We were not immune to it by any means. It's a humbling experience, that's for sure.
Are there any more questions? I'm looking around to see. Nobody's posted anything on the chat. Any other questions for Tom?
I have a question. It's not for Tom. I just wonder if anybody's had any luck with the virtual listings. I've launched 2 of mine virtually, one in Newmarket, one in Bowmanville, and I've not gotten any traction on them yet. So I know that Kiki had a sale of one a couple of weeks ago. I'm just wondering if anybody else since that time has actually had any luck with virtual listings.
No luck with virtual listings with me, and also showings have dried up significantly in the past few days.
I can update you on today's activity because I listed one yesterday. Virtual photos only, like staged virtually. Did a 3D virtual tour, and I've had very healthy activity. Had an agent already call me wanting to bring me in off. I'm at $999, below $1 million. So I think price point matters. And I tried to give them as much information as I could, and they're not allowed in the property until after we see an offer. So it's possible.
Great.
And the location is prime. Location is prime. That's the key, I think, as well. It's on the subway line. That also helps. Okay.
I listed one last week with just virtual tours only, not allowing showings until an offer. We did receive an offer last week, but it didn't come together. We've only had one other agent reach out to us at this point, and that's just north of Barrie.
I've had 8 or 9 agents reach out to me already, and it's been 24 hours, and the home inspection's not even ready yet. So I will keep you posted.
Great. There was a question for you, Kiki. Who did you use to do the 3D virtual staging?
I posted it on KW. His name is Rob, and I can't remember the company name, but I just called up a listing that sold around here 2 months ago. Susan Bodie's listing, and she was kind enough to share his name with me. I just went with it, and he said he could turn it around in 24 hours. He had it to me by 5 o'clock yesterday. So really pleased with his pictures. Place looks phenomenal virtually. But then I give them real pictures on the 3D tour, because obviously they can't put an offer in a place that they don't have a real feeling for. I don't want the, oh, this looks nothing like what you were advertising. So I gave them the virtual, this is what it could look like if you have nice furniture, and then I gave them the real feel of walking through the house in its actuality. So
well, that's great. Yeah,
I'm happy to share his name again on KW.
You know what, folks, and Mike maybe never would have become the more well-rounded agent that he became if he was given the opportunity to still work with buyers. But this whole virtual thing is maybe the way things will unravel as we move forward. And, you know, we had a conversation with our doctor over the phone, I don't know, 3 days ago. And I'm thinking, why didn't we do this 5 years ago? I mean, why do we need to go into a doctor's office and sit there for an hour and wait for somebody to tell us that, here, do this and do that? Most of the time, and the way you can do these virtual tours on these houses, hopefully will eliminate a lot of showings that aren't serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to add, I had a property go live this week and did a virtual tour of it that we could send out to realtors, and sent it out to one, and they reviewed it and they're seriously looking at it. The other people looked at the video and decided it wasn't for them. So they didn't come up from Mississauga to Barrie and didn't go into the house unnecessarily. So I found that the virtual tour actually was very beneficial that way.
And with those virtual tours, you're not just putting them on the listing. You're saying, contact me and I'll send it to you. Is that how you're handling it?
They're having, when they call to book a showing, they're having to respond to they're having to respond to showings saying if they're feeling well or not, and having to sign off that everybody's well. And I get their information and contact them and let them know that I have a virtual tour that I could send them. And I'm just sending them the virtual tour, and they're sharing it with their clients. Not getting as many showing requests, but the ones who are requesting are much more serious.
And that's all that matters,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
And just preparing the seller for that and letting them know they're getting maybe fewer showings, and just educating the sellers as well.
If I can just add on that. So for example, when it gets into the marketplace and it's soft and you're having to do price adjustments, my rule of thumb when I train all my assistants this way would be 10 to 12 showings or 2 to 3 weeks in the market, no offers, it's time to reduce the price. End of story. I don't care how many other things you look at or analyze or whatever. Well, be aware that this is another thing to keep in mind. The virtual tour is still, if other houses are selling, Mike can sell 2 in one night. It shows there's buyers out there. It all still boils down to the price. And it's creating timelines in your marketplace that you start to understand which is the norm. In our area, the bottom line was 10 days, 2 weeks, or 10 to 12 showings. Either one took place first. I don't care any reasons, what, where, when, whatever. If it wasn't happening, it was time to think about a price adjustment. And that kind of verbiage for you folks is what you want to start to get customized to start having to do this with some of those properties that aren't moving.
And if I could add to that, Tom, on the pivot shift ahead page on KW Connect, there's some scripts that address that exact topic and can be of use for sure. So make sure you check those out.
Don't let the clients lull you into, well, we're dealing with a health crisis. Don't get lulled into that. Houses are selling. We dealt with it in the 90s. It looked like there was an election going on down some of our streets. There were so many for sale signs. But we still sold them, and they sold in 10 days, 2 weeks, even during the 90s when the price was right. Who knew what that needed to be? But at the end of the day, it all boiled down to what the price was. You guys aren't there yet, but just those are things you want to think about. You want to be ahead of the market, and don't let your clients lull you into just saying, wow, you know, it's a terrible time. Well, people still need to sell, and houses will sell. Until the government says you got to close everything down, you're going to still sell houses. Anyways, guys, be positive. Be the guidance to what's going through. Be the coach to your clients, and be positive. You're going to get them through it. And that's the attitude you want to maintain through this time, through a year from now, through 2 years from now. And be thankful that you're in this business, because what a great opportunity to go out and make as much money and help as many people as you can. Where else can you do it?
That was great. We really appreciate having you on, Tom. That was awesome.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Please give our love to Diane.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nobody loves
Thanks,
me.
Tommy. Thanks, everyone.
They always love Diane. They always love Diane.
Well, we can give you our love right here, right now, Tom.
Nobody loves me. What are you telling me, Jamie? Are you telling I'm just this whole hard, cold nut? Is that what it is?
Thank you, Tom.
Right. Take care,
Thank
folks.
you.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
everyone.
Hope to see you
Thanks
on
for listening.
tomorrow.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.